I swear, being a Lions fan means you don't even get 24 hours to breathe. The season barely ends, literally the day after we close it out with that gritty 19-16 win. And the front office is already moving. No pause, no reset, just straight into business mode. And when I saw what happened, I had that feeling, that mix of, okay, I see what you're doing, and all right, this might actually matter more than people think. Because this isn't flashy, it's not the headline move that blows up social media. But if you really follow this team, if you really watch every snap, you know these kinds of decisions shape what this roster looks like when the games actually matter. And what they decided to do right away says a lot about where this franchise believes it is right now. Before we break it all down, do me a quick favor. If you're a real one, if you're riding with this team through every high and low, hit that like button. Subscribe to Lions Nation Report. We're a brand new channel trying to hit our first 200 subscribers, and if you care about real Lions talk from actual fans, you're in the right place. All right? So here's what actually happened. The Detroit Lions didn't waste a single second after closing the season with that 19-16 win over the Chicago Bears. On January 5th, they immediately got to work and re-signed 3 exclusive rights free agents: running back Jacob Sailors, cornerback Nick Whiteside, and offensive lineman Michael Nisi. Now, I know those aren't names that break ESPN. But stay with me, because this matters more than people realize. Let's start with Jacob Sailors. He wasn't your feature back. He wasn't getting a bunch of carries. But he was our top kick returner this season and played primarily on special teams. And if you watched every game like I did, you know field position quietly shaped so many moments this year. Having stability in the return game matters. You don't want chaos back there. You want reliability. Bringing him back tells me the coaching staff trusts him in that role. Then there's Nick Whiteside. He appeared in 9 games this season and had 3 pass breakups. Again, not flashy numbers. But that's rotational depth in the secondary. And in this league, you don't survive a full season without depth at corner. We've seen injuries hit before. We know what that feels like. Keeping a guy who's already been in the system, already understands the scheme, that's smart roster management. And Michael Nisi, he played in 8 games as a backup on the offensive line. And let's be honest, offensive line depth is non-negotiable. We've built our identity around physical football. Protect the quarterback, run the ball, control the line of scrimmage. If you lose depth up front, everything starts to wobble. Bringing him back keeps continuity in the trenches, and that's very much on brand for how this front office builds. Now here's where it gets interesting. On top of those 3 re-signings, the Lions kept 9 players on future contracts, and every single one of them finished the season on the practice squad. That's not random. That's intentional. On the defensive side, they locked in defensive end Ahmed Hassanain. And remember, he was a draft pick last year. That's important. You don't just give up on draft investments. Keeping him around shows they still believe there's development upside there. They also kept defensive tackle Chris Smith and safety Lauren Strickland. Again, depth pieces, developmental guys. But defensive line and secondary depth are areas you can never have too much of. On offense, they brought back wide receivers Jackson Meeks and Malik Cunningham. That tells me they're still evaluating the bottom of the receiver room. Competition is coming. Nobody at the back end of that depth chart should feel comfortable. They also signed offensive linemen Devin Cochran and Mason Miller to future deals. More trench insurance, more bodies to develop, more competition. Running back Jabari Small and tight end Zach Horton were also kept. That's intriguing. Running back depth always turns over in the offseason, and tight end has been a big part of our identity. Keeping developmental options in-house gives flexibility before free agency even starts. Here's what I love about this. This front office isn't reacting emotionally to the end of the season. They're operating with structure. The day after the season ends, they're already securing depth, retaining developmental players, protecting roster flexibility. That's how stable organizations behave. And if you zoom out, this tells you something about where the Detroit Lions see themselves. They're not rebuilding. They're not tearing it down. They're reinforcing the foundation. These aren't desperate moves. These are "we know who we are" moves. But I'll say this too. Depth signings don't replace impact additions. We still have big decisions ahead. Contracts, cap space, future extensions. The window we're in right now, it's real. And that means every roster move, even the quiet ones, matters. This team just finished the season fighting. You could feel the grit in that Chicago game. And now the front office is fighting too, just in a different way. To me, this signals urgency without panic, structure without complacency. And honestly, as a Lions fan who's lived through chaos for years, that kind of steady approach feels different. It feels like a team that expects to compete. Now it's about what comes next. Because if we're serious about a Super Bowl window, and I believe we are, these depth pieces need to either develop fast or push the roster from underneath. Competition breeds growth, and this roster better keep evolving. That's the standard now. All right, I want to hear from you. Which of these re-signings do you think actually matters the most? Do you see one of these future guys breaking through next season? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's talk about it like real fans. And if you're rocking with Lions Nation Report, hit that like button, subscribe, and help us get to our first 200 subscribers. We're building something here just like this team is. Step by step. One pride, always.